All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our night around the clock, the 8 o'clock hour, where we're going to talk a little bit about sports betting, the current state of the industry, and the future. Alongside of myself, we have my other associates, Marty Cordelesa and Marlon Trejo. And today we're joined with two great guests, Ross Sheflott and Dan Marrazza. Guys, how are you guys doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Doing awesome. Thanks for having us.
Hey, we're glad to have you. Just to start off, we have Dan, if you want to talk about your career path, where you are now, and just go off.
Yeah, sure thing. So I worked for DraftKings from 2018 until 2020, starting around the time when the Supreme Court had legalized sports betting. I had worked as in social media, launching the DK Sportsbook handles and a lot of the company's overall social media strategy in the wake of the legalization in 2018. For me, before that, I had come from professional hockey. I had been with the Vegas Golden Knights as an expansion team as the director of digital and social media, and had spent the previous 14 years of my career starting as a high school intern in professional hockey, and then made that pivot to gaming, when it kind of became a new thing in 2018. So I like to be like to say I'm the guy who, as the country adopted sports betting, I kind of did in my career also.
Perfect. My name is Ross Sheflott. I started in 2019, early 2019 with Bet365. I am a in-play golf trader. I do PGA Tour betting lines for 2 balls and 3 balls, depending on what they're playing in each day. Prior to that, I worked for 10 years as either a PGA head golf professional or a PGA assistant professional at 3 different clubs in 3 different states in the northeastern United States. Have always had a knowledge and passion for golf, and when the opportunity opened up, really enjoyed the idea of moving that into the legal gaming industry.
All right, before we continue, if anyone at any time has any questions, please, we encourage you to throw them in the chat, and we'll have them answered for you. To continue, Dan, you're at DraftKings now, or you were previously at DraftKings. Can you just describe a little bit of like your day-to-day daily tasks?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things I like to say in startup mode, and I've kind of said this about the industry in general, joining DraftKings at the time that I did in 2018, it's almost like joining Budweiser the day after Prohibition ended, where there's so much going on in such a short period of time that I used to say that the days are almost like weeks and the weeks are almost like months with the amount that you get done. So as far as daily routine and things of that nature, I think it was never necessarily the same. I think overall the goal is that there's so many aspects of social media, especially in gaming, that's a little different than anything else in that it's federally regulated, that you have a lot of states with individual laws. So a lot of what we were doing there was developing precedent where how can we advertise this and do it in a way that's legally compliant. Sometimes I wish I went to law school when I was working there to understand some of the things, but it was really to build out that structure. And then as we kind of went along, as you launch new products, whether that be Sportsbook, whether that be casino games, whether that be entering into the various states as they become legalized, my role there was kind of developing marketing strategies to help with all the launches. I almost went one launch to the other, so to speak. So that day in and day out, that could be posting on social, that could be in meetings with creative teams and developing graphics and assets and making sure that they're all legally compliant, working with the legal team to make sure that I understand these laws that maybe I didn't understand 10 minutes before, and just kind of being that what I kind of call that joiner that kind of joins everybody else together, and just kind of being that jack of all trades and developing the strategy there.
Ross, go ahead. Same question.
My day-to-day is, like I said, I work with PGA Tour. Typically what I do is 2 balls and 3 balls. So guys that are paired together, I'll do next hole winner, next hole score, next 3-hole winner, next 3-hole score, markets like that. I do have some experience with outright, who's going to win the tournament. And I do mostly PGA Tour, but I've done tours and events all over the globe. South Africa, Japan, Australia, done events in all different places. And for a little bit during the start of COVID, I did some e-soccer betting lines as well.
Awesome. Now I'm going to kick it over to Marlon with our next question.
You guys, so to start off here for the first question, obviously it's no secret that sports betting is really popular and keeps growing and growing. So can you guys talk a little bit about that? Just on how much it's grown and how you guys have experienced that?
I'll let Ross, you go first.
For me personally, the growth has been it's been huge. I mean, when I first started, the only bets that we could take were from outside the U.S. So, I get to see all the bets coming in, and, you saw them from all countries all over the world, but we didn't see anything U.S. And now we have so much happening in the U.S. And then on top of that, we are expanding sports constantly. We are expanding the different leagues. I mean, I joke with some of my friends every once in a while, name a country and a sport, and I guarantee you there's a league out there, and we are trading that at some point in time. A guy near me today was doing Moroccan soccer. So, I mean, we are constantly doing things. And then during COVID, it was a huge thing for us. We needed something to do. So we started with esports, and that has just been massive for us. That's something that we thought we were going to get rid of when regular sports came back, but we just couldn't. Esports has been so massive and has expanded our business so much that we continue that, as well as all the other leagues and sports that we do around the world.
I think following up on that, one of the things that you kind of mentioned too, and I just kind of remember back, it seems like it's 100 years ago, but I guess it was only a year ago. I guess that's kind of how the last year has kind of gone. Right when COVID had started, you would see around the world, you would see like Australian rules football that would still be playing. And what you would see in terms of action is that you wouldn't necessarily think that Australian rules football would have a giant market in the state of New Jersey or the states Pennsylvania, but you would see that action kind of follow you, whether it was, I think it was Russian hockey and Australian league football and things of that nature. I think one of the things that kind of showed us that maybe learned a little bit more myself than maybe I had previously known is that a lot of times it's less about I'm a fan of this sport, so let me have some action on this sport. I think it was that overall thrill of competition. And I would say that just based on the numbers, I would say for sure that a lot of the people that were wagering on Australian rules football were not necessarily experts on Australian rules football. I think that kind of showed that. I think kind of how Ross was saying too, when it comes to like e-gaming and things of that nature too, is that one of the things that DraftKings that we had done early on in the pandemic was we started streaming Madden games, Madden simulation games in our app, and you could have people that could play DFS off fantasy sports off of that. And even though it's not quite the same as the NFL, it's still that thrill of competition and it's still that nature of gaming. And I think that we kind of saw that. I think that's one of the things that we definitely saw out of COVID. And in terms of the growth, just the point is 10 years ago, if somebody in New Jersey, my home state, wanted to wager on Australian rules football, that wasn't really a possibility. Now you have so many leagues and so many countries, and you have so many people that can access it at all times. And as we were kind of mentioning, even before we kind of came on, we saw some legislation in Florida today, some big steps towards the legalization of mobile betting in Florida, is that it seems like every day there's progress in another state, and this is millions of more people that you see getting exposed to it. And one of the things that I always use as the litmus test to show how mainstream it's beginning to come is just turn on a baseball game these days, and you never used to see lines in the bottom line. You never used to see analysts that would be plugging over Jacob deGrom over under 9.5 strikeouts. What is this? You would never have seen that even a year ago. But just as you kind of see that, you just see so many more people who maybe didn't even understand what minus 120 meant are now seeing these things on TV, and it's becoming kind of mainstream. So I think that's kind of the step that I kind of put it. It went from something over the last couple of years that maybe used to be popular, but maybe not mainstream. And now it's just part of it's mainstream part of the sports conversation now.
And to piggyback off of what Dan just finished up with there, one of the big things that I've also noticed is when it got legalized in this country, you saw most major leagues come out with some statement stating, we accept that it's been approved, but we're not going to have any part of it. We're not going to advertise for it, and our players can't advertise for it. Now, you got, I mean, on the PGA Tour, you have guys wearing DraftKings logos, you got BetMGM logos, you got Caesar logos. PGA Tour is constantly putting out lines. Like you said, MLB has it. NFL, everybody has now done a complete 180 in 2.5 years and accepted it fully and is advertising for it and partnering with it. I mean, it's become so huge from where the leagues didn't really want any part of it, but now they're all in on it.
I think one of the things that has kind of gone into that too, and I guess this is one of the unintended consequences of COVID, is that I think COVID, if anything, has expedited some of the legalization processes and some of these deals being signed, because you have state governments now that they need money and there's tax revenue to be had this way. So in the past, maybe you would see New Jersey and Pennsylvania have it, and then New York looks over and says, "Oh shucks, we got people driving over the George Washington Bridge here that are playing in New Jersey. That could be our revenue here," and whether that's across the board, you've seen that way. So to me, I think that's really been an aspect that has sped up, not like I said, not just legalizations and legislation and those processes, but also just the deal that these teams themselves want to sign these deals. Also, just because teams have been hurting as well too. I think one of the things that I've learned from working on the team side of professional sports is that most teams employ on the business side 60, 70, 80 total employees. And by any other definition, that's a mom and pop. It just happens to be that it's a mom and pop with a globally recognized logo in a lot of cases. So these are small businesses that are hurting for money, and that they could generate this from these deals, because this is something that you're able to do regardless of whether games are happening and fans are in the stands. So I think all of those things have almost been, it's not been good for America, I guess, to have COVID and all the things that go with that, but it's almost been the perfect storm in accelerating the gaming industry over the last year or so.
To kind of piggybacking off of that, with all sports being back and being able to bet on like the 4 major sports, I guess Ross, since you're still in the sports betting industry, have you seen like a more of an increase or a decrease in people betting on esports games?
On esports, absolutely. I mean, esports, it really hasn't gone away, and we now are offering more things than we even did 8 months ago, 10 months ago at the start of COVID, because now you're getting more leagues out there. I mean, I remember one of the things that I was trading, which I always used to joke about, was a Russian professional e-soccer league. And I'm doing it at 10 o'clock at night on the East Coast, which is 4 or 5 in the morning in Russia. And these are, kids, 20-year-olds playing video games in Russian. We're trading it, and it's being bet around the globe. But now you have leagues of all different sports. You got e-hockey, you got e-soccer, e-football, e-basketball, everything being traded and being done a lot more often than it was before, because these e-leagues have now realized we can become mainstream. Before, they didn't really have that avenue, but COVID gave them that avenue to be a lot more mainstream and to be one of the main things on 15 to 20 gambling websites' main home pages. So they've really capitalized on that, and esports have grown exponentially in the last 10 months, a year.
Going off of that, I think one of the things that we always see, I guess, through our history, I guess I'm a big history buff this way, is and whenever there's moments of chaos, there's always innovation. And I think at the beginning of it, it was almost like, how can we adapt to survive? But I think this is something that what started out as an adaptation to having esports and things of that nature, this isn't going away anymore now. This is something that the companies have perhaps seen success in. So in the old days, and by the old days, I mean pre-COVID, it might be that the football season is from September until the end of January. Yeah, the football season, but you could be running e-football the rest of the year. And even if it's not on the as Super Bowl Sunday, there's still a lot of participation there. And these are things that providers, they have the ability to own content schedules this way, that you can, like, I know this is one of the things at DraftKings that was a goal of ours, was to be streaming a game 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to have at least one going on that way. So using it not as something that's in competition with actual football betting, so to speak, but almost as a companion of it, it really allows it to be 365 day year action. And the degree that esports has really added to that, I think it's maybe the most exciting thing I've seen over the last year, is just the potential that there is with this, because you will now no longer beholden to rain delays and schedules. You could run it yourself.
And the last thing is, it's taught us about our customers. We've now realized that our customers would rather, in lots of cases, would rather bet on a 12-minute game and place that bet and get the results and their payout or determine that they lost in 12 minutes than wait 2 hours for a normal game being played by professionals. So they want immediate results, which is what we've found, which has definitely impacted the different types of markets that we're looking to offer and how often we're looking to offer those markets, because we realize that bettors want more immediate markets rather than long-term markets.
I'm kind of going off of that. This might be a stretch, but do you see esports possibly overtaking betting on like normal sports?
I would say no, not overtaking. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Do I see an e-football league ever being more popular to bet on than the NFL? No, just because I think it's going to take a long time before the average person consumes that product on a regular basis on their TV or however it is that they're watching their football typically. There's still a ton of value in the idea of the game is on TV, I'm watching it, so I'm going to place a bet on it. That's still probably the biggest mode of where we're getting our bets from. But there's still a huge market share for esports, and to the point that Dan made, that's year round. It instead of the NFL being from September to the first weekend in February, an e-football league is going to be getting their customers and making their money 12 months out of the year. And same with e-soccer, same with e-basketball, everything. They can go year round. So it's going to be more of it's not going to be a cyclical type of business the way that the other sports are.
I don't necessarily think it's going to ever overtake actual sports in terms of handle and revenue that's generated from it. I do think the one thing that it does have the ability to do is potentially overtake it in terms of content, just because it is something that does have the ability to be 365 days a year. As an example, one of the things that I've learned that I've found really interesting when it came to growing social media channels at DraftKings was that the things that had the biggest success level for us were things that were almost simulating our product, but they were not actually gambling. You can't go on Twitter and say, hey, Venmo me $5 and you have action in this. That's not really how it works. But if you say, if you retweet this and predict if this game's going to hit the over or the under, you can win Y, and maybe Y is tickets to a game. Maybe it's something that's like a meet and greet with a team alumni or something like that. That stuff that drove insane engagement. I think you have the ability to do that with esports type stuff as well. I think one of the things that I see as one of the really untapped potential for this is not just sports books and gaming companies offering this, but I think on TV broadcasts you could do this. If you're watching a hockey game and you have a 15-minute intermission, and what's that intermission programming, and it's a 5-minute segment of a video game that's simulated, and if you say right on the TV broadcast, follow insert sponsor's name and say what you think is going to happen, and you could win glass seats to the next game, you're going to have people that instead of getting their popcorn there in the intermission, that you've basically given them action in the intermission off of other things. That's just one example of ways that I think it could really be mainstreamed. So I think just in terms of overall content and overall things that people maybe watch, I think it has the ability just to be so much more. Where even if it doesn't overtake and handle, I think it really has the chance to overtake in terms of something that people spend more time on just because it's going throughout the entire year.
All right, so now we'll have our first question from the chat. This question is from Giovanna, and she's asking, do you think there is a heightened interest in sports betting due to the global pandemic? So, Dan, if you want to kick this one off, go for it.
I would say yes, honestly. I think one of the reasons for that is that as things are closed, people need things to do, I think is what it really comes down to. I think especially for mobile betting, this has been really the perfect storm where I think of when I moved to Las Vegas in 2016 with the Golden Knights, and mobile betting wasn't really a thing in this country at that point, is that you would see people running into the sportsbook and placing their bets that what if the pandemic had hit in 2016? That would not have really been happening. Now, in only 5 years, you see people being able to do this from home. So while states and activities and things like that have been closed, you have your phone sitting right there, and you have the ability to give yourself that level of excitement and that level of action. And even and we've all been there where we've gone through, what TV show are we going to stream next, and what are we going to do? Is that you have the ability just to get something that kind of excite yourself and entertain yourself and keep yourself occupied during what is a time that it's hard to do that. I think it's definitely increased based on that during the pandemic.
I agree completely. I definitely think it's increased. I know it's increased. And I mean, what we've seen in this country is that the businesses, the pastimes that cater to people with disposable income have done very well during the pandemic, because those people who have that disposable income really weren't as affected as much as people who don't have that same amount of money. So, for example, my other industry, golf, boomed during the pandemic. Golf got huge. I mean, rounds were exploding everywhere. Just tons more people were playing golf than ever before. But the same thing with betting. Those people who have that money, who have that time, now have even more time to be able to do this, and they can bet because there just isn't as many. There weren't as many other options for them to do their leisure activities. It was basically golf and betting and hiking.
It's almost like, if I gotta spend money to go to a concert, oh wait, there's no concerts anymore.
Yeah.
I have this entire other slice of my disposable income to do something else. What can I do it on? I can order a movie, or I can order some food, or I can bet. And you see a lot of that. So Great point on people with disposable income. I think those people already had disposable income. Now they have fewer things that they can spend it on.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll go to our next question. This question's by Joseph, and he says, as arenas and stadium capacities start opening up, do you guys think you'll see a difference in the betting, since we haven't had fans for a year and a half, 2 years? So if you guys wanna, or if Dan, if you wanna start off
Yeah.
with that.
I think, but kind of on the point that we were mentioning from the prior question, is that people have had fewer things to do, so maybe they're betting. Is that, I guess there's always that risk that, if things open up, that it kind of unravels that in the opposite direction. That being said, I can't see a scenario where opening up venues is going to hurt participation in sports betting. I think same thing when I went to Las Vegas with the Golden Knights back in 2016, is that it was the idea of like, wow, this is something that people could sit in a game. And the closest sportsbook of New York was about a 45-second walk outside of T-Mobile Arena, and how crazy it would be that somebody could place a bet at that sportsbook at 6:30 and then walk into the arena at 6:45 and watch a game. Is that it really added an element to it. Like I said, and the same thing is all these years later, is that does add an extra element to it. Is that, so the thing is, I think if you see people going to Yankee Stadium and there's a retail sportsbook in Yankee Stadium that is sponsored by someone, and you have the ability to get that little bit of action before you go to your seat, you pick up your beer, you pick up your hot dog, and you place a bet that way, it really has the ability to add that. I think the thing that is going to really impact that is the degree to which and the speed with which those retail sports books open up. So just to give those who maybe aren't familiar a background, is that one of the big things right now for gaming companies is that they have the ability to open properties. DraftKings is going to open one in Wrigley Field. Think of the amount of people that go through Wrigley Field every year that are going to have access this, that it really becomes incredibly valuable for both sides, where you have the teams have the ability to, whether it's through rent, whether it's through partnerships, they have the ability to have 365-day year foot traffic into their ballparks, when in the past they had 81 home games and that was it. So it's tremendously lucrative for them. And then for the sports betting companies, I think it goes without saying, if you have 3 million New York Yankee fans going through New York Yankee Stadium every year, and they have an inclination to be into sports, and you have the ability to do customer acquisition here, the value of that is incredibly high. So I think I've seen some of those announced, and you see some of the construction begin on those as they start to develop. I think that's going to be the thing that, as capacities come back and those open, you're really going to see an increase just on that, because it's really going to be have the ability to add quite a bit to the experience of going to a game.
I was at 2 sporting events in the 2019-2020 winter, right before COVID. And both of those stadiums had branded retail betting outfits already in them. This was, a year and a half ago. So I think it's absolutely going to explode more and more. Yeah, every stadium is going to need it as long as they're in a place that's legal, in a state that's legal, which it's just going to keep happening. Every state is going to eventually do it. They just have to. To the point Stan mentioned earlier, there's just too much money out there available to them that they're going to have to do it, and it's free money for them. They're not paying for anything. It's free money for them. So, but yeah, I don't think the opening of stadiums is going to affect or create any sort of a downturn in the amount of betting. I don't think it'll necessarily create a huge upturn. I think more than anything, it may get more customers more acclimated with companies that they maybe didn't notice before, because now, Bet365 has a retail place at this stadium where maybe I haven't heard of Bet365, or Unibet is here and I've never heard of Unibet. There's so many books out there that even probably some experienced bettors don't know them all. So, I think if anything, it's just going to get people more acclimated to more companies and spread the money around even more.
One of the things that you mentioned, there being so many books, watching a New Jersey Devils hockey game is, I think they have a William Hill property in the arena, but you just watch somebody skate 200 feet on the ice, and I think the advertisements on the boards, I think it's like 6 different sports books. And it's like, you kind of look and it's like, man, that was just one rush down the ice and you saw all those different places. And to that point is, people maybe know, the MGMs and, some of the bigger places, but some of them people don't necessarily know. I think one of the things that we're currently experiencing right now, it's almost similar to the .com boom of the late 90s when the internet became a thing. You had all these .coms, and you had so many that people in school now probably never even heard of, that I probably can't even remember, that came out when I was 8 years old. And then eventually you started to see consolidation and acquisitions, and you saw, people get wealthy when they sold their .com to Google or to Yahoo or things of that nature. It's not exactly the same, but I think there are some similarities right now that I don't like using the expression Wild West, but it is to some degree, is that you have so many different people that are trying to get their pieces of the pie on this. And I think in the long run, there is going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And I think it has definitely the ability to see some of that same consolidation that we saw with the .coms in the late 90s. But right now, we're in the late 90s and all the .coms are competing for your attention. So I think that kind of speaks to, the visibility of those.
You saw this past football season, you saw some absolutely incredible promotions being put out there by every company. Bet $1 on Patrick Mahomes throwing for 20 yards and win $100. Of course that's going to happen. It's free money that these companies are giving away to new customers because they want these customers to come and shop with them. So right now in this country is a great time to be a new customer at a betting company, because the promotions that are being put out there are incredible, and it's being put out by everyone. It's not just one company doing it. Everybody is fighting for your money and for your customer, or for you to be their customer, and they're willing to put a lot of money up to get you.
It's one of the things that was funny in my family on Super Bowl Sunday. You had so many promotions from so many different places that were coming in, saying to some of them, this is free money. It's not like explaining this to them. And I have relatives that are signing up for every single book you possibly can to get these offers and get the free money. But then in the case of some of them, okay, maybe some of them maybe don't go back in, but a lot of them do. It's almost like, what do you have, one potato chip, and then you kind of close the bag? Is that you see the effectiveness of it right there in that. Mm-hmm. And I think it was something like, and granted, a lot of the promotions, they have maximum amounts that you can spend. Yeah. The company doesn't so somebody doesn't say, let me bet $5 million on Patrick Mahomes throwing 20 yards.
No, you can make is $100 or something, but still.
Exactly. But same thing is, if you have 14, 15 different books and somebody does this on every single one of them, you just had a nice couple $100 weekend just to submit your email addresses. So no, some of those offers are really incredible, and they're effective.
So I know you guys kind of covered this, but Giovanna had a question, and before we went off to another topic, I wanted to ask it. So Is there going to be an opportunity for in-game, in-stadium betting and partnerships with the stadiums and clubs? I know you guys talked about it a little bit, but
I think so. I think so for sure.
There- if I'm guessing what she's talking about correctly, if she's talking about being at, let's say, a Yankee game in Yankee Stadium and betting on that Yankee game, yes, there will be an opportunity for that. However, there's going to be some things with that because obviously we spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to make sure that we have as fast of information as we can possibly get. But you at that stadium are faster, period. You're there, you know it, you're faster. So there typically there's delays, whether it be 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds on different things so that you're not putting this information in. But what we're also going to have, and we have at most games already, is scouts, somebody who's supposed to be at that physical place inputting information as it's happening so that somebody there can't beat us to the punch on, is Aaron Judge going to hit a home run? You hear the crack of the bat and you hit yes. And so we have a scout there who's on it immediately as well. But yes, absolutely. It's going to happen. We're going to figure it out, and it's going to be allowed because there's just too much interest there for it to not be figured out at some point.
You mentioned people, if Aaron Judge is going to hit a home run, and you got to have fast fingers on that. I mean, man, it's like you hear that crack of the bat, and you know that this market might be down in a half second. You better be fast. You better have your Jeopardy fingers going. But even just to think of that, think of how many eyeballs are going to be glued on their phones during games when they're at venues. If that's the case, holy cow! I mean, I love to be selling sponsorship space there too, because if you have people's eyes that are just glued to the phone, I mean, that space is just incredibly valuable.
Oh, we have another question from Giovanna. She wants to know what type of personality is needed to excel in this segment of the industry. Does this person need to be more number and metrics focused, or more interested in the customer and user's experience?
You want me to start this one off?
You go first. Let's trade.
I mean, it depends. It depends a lot on what you're doing. I mean, Dan and I, when Dan was with DraftKings, we do very different things. I'm on the side that is adjusting and making lines that people can bet on. Dan is promoting, marketing, trying to be enthusiastic. Very customer faced. I do not speak with customers at all. So there's so many different opportunities. There's customer service, there's fraud, there's tech, there's engineering, there's everything that you can possibly think of. And yeah, there's people, that if you want to work on the mathematical side, whether it be engineering or what we do with lines, you got to have at least a decent background with math. You got to be good at math to a certain extent. You don't have to be, a genius or anything like that, but you have to know what you're doing when it comes to fractions and decimals and computing things and things like that. And you have to be able to do it relatively quickly with probabilities. But if you're passionate about sports, there's probably a job at a book for you. I don't know what specifically that would be, but there's probably a job somewhere. And I'm also guessing that like us, most books are hiring a lot of different positions right now, especially in this country. So there's probably a job for you out there if you are passionate about this.
I'll say this is, thank God that I don't have to do the math section the way you guys do. I don't think I've taken a math class since the 12th grade. I mean, thankfully is no. When on the marketing side and social media, I think the extent of my working with numbers would be more social media analytics and things of that nature. And that's just when it comes down to recognizing what content is performing and things of that nature. So it's not that numbers are not entirely involved, but it's not quite the same of fractions and things like that. Like I'm just breaking out into a sweat thinking of multiplying those fractions that way. But no, on my side, it would definitely be more ability with words and kind of understanding people. I think that's in social media. I think there's a huge aspect of that. It's understanding the essence of people. What do they react to? What do they not react to? I think one of the things that anybody who lives in social media will say is like, I have the screen time counter on my phone, and God, there's some days where it's like 16 hours a day that my screen is on, and I'm like, man, I'm only up for like 17. I mean, is that it's quite a bit of screen time that way, and the value of that is that's how you're learning the language of the internet. That's how you're learning your customers. That's how you're learning what they like and what they don't like. And same thing as if you're knowing how to make memes and what memes to make based off of things like that. So I think on the social side, it's a combination where if I was going to rank it, number 3 would be math. Number 2 would probably be almost like English, ability with words and being quippy. And number 1 is just understanding the essence of people. It really is a people type of a job.
All right, so we have another question from the chat. This question is from Devin. This question is, what are the marketing strategies like to attract new participants? What is the messaging that is getting through to people to try sports betting for the first time? And Dan, if you want to take this one.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the things, and I think is that each company has their own approach to marketing and what their brand is. I think there are some overriding themes, though. I think some of the overriding themes are that in the old days, a lot of people looked at sports betting as something that happened kind of below the surface of society and was something that was maybe taboo, something that was intimidating, that the type of people that are there when you go in, or maybe some people that maybe mainstream Americans maybe get intimidated just by even walking near. Is I think one of the overall marketing messages is that this is something that doesn't have to be that way, that this is something that's being mainstreamized, that's being something that has the ability to be, I'm trying to think of the word for it, but has the ability to be something that's not intimidating and not scary. I think that is an overriding theme that places are trying to establish, is that this is something that you can do sitting on the couch and having an argument with your buddy and say, hey, I'm going to put in action on Kansas City and I'm going to put in action on Tampa Bay, and let's add that element to things. I think that's definitely one of the overriding themes that places are going to trying to do. I think one of the things that has been interesting to see the different approaches that some companies have taken within that to say, well, how do we connect with our customer bases that way? I think one of the things we've seen overwhelmingly is focusing on younger audiences, not only because the same way every sports league is always, you always hear about MLB targeting the 9-year-old, the 10-year-old. Is obviously sports betting is not targeting a 9 or a 10-year-old. It's that 21 and up. But it's the same concept of people that are maybe more 21 and 22, as opposed to 61 or 62. And also those are the ones that are maybe a little bit more tech savvy and maybe a little bit more likely to be able to have those quick fingers at a game to be doing things, So I think overall, it's been targeting young professionals in their 20s. I think it's been a lot of that. But I think overall is just mainstreamizing it. And I think I made up that word, mainstreamizing it. But it's kind of mainstreamizing it.
Very quickly, obviously, Dan is much more knowledgeable on this subject than I am. But from our point of view, from where I sit, one of the big things that I know that we want to make sure and that is preached to us constantly is our own integrity, is that everything that we are doing on our side of things, making the lines, putting them out there, everything we're doing is on the up and up. Everything we're doing is legal and fair and integrity. If we don't have integrity, if the customers believe that we don't have integrity, we fail completely. So for us, it's a big thing that we have that, because otherwise customers will go somewhere where they do think that the lines are on the up and up and everything is fair.
I think one of the things that I guess I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to reading comments on social media over the years is that one of the things is, even if something is entirely on the up and up, one of the most popular comments when somebody loses a bet is going to be yelling that the game is rigged, or your vig is too high, or whatever the case may be, is that they're going to yell and scream those things. Knowing that they're going to yell and scream those things when things are entirely on the up and up, even more so, you cannot have any inclination that things are not. So that is definitely an aspect of it too, is showing that, granted, you can't show exactly why the odds are what the odds are, but really establishing that overall trust factor, I think is it's an excellent point, and it's something that's definitely used with it. You name the insult though, I've seen it in the comments.
Oh, absolutely.
So another question here from Devin. He asked, can you speak to the difficulties and opportunities involved with sports betting on college sports? Ross, if you want to kick us off with that.
Yeah, I mean, just being in New Jersey, there's a lot of different things that go into being able to bet on Rutgers. I mean, a Rutgers game you can't bet on because each state, and it's not just in this country, it's something that's highlighted in this country, but it's throughout the world. Italy has different rules than England, and they have different rules than Belarus or whomever. Everybody has different rules, and just like New Jersey has different rules than New York, where you have to be I think it's an average age or something in Italy. I think in New Jersey, it's you can't be, you have to be professional, like college. New Jersey college sports can't be bet on in the state of New Jersey, is I believe what the actual rule is. So there's a lot of different things with that. Where I know, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a Ohio State Rutgers game that we were going to offer, but it was being played in New Jersey, so we couldn't offer Ohio State, which is obviously a huge team that people want to bet on and people want to gamble with. So it's college sports. I mean, it's just whatever the rules each state has determines what we do, what we can and can't do. And, that goes back to a previous subject, but we have some of the best and brightest people when it comes to engineering and software engineering, where we can put out a line and we can put out a game, and our software engineers have created the programs where it doesn't show up in the New Jersey website, or when your phone crosses over a bridge into New Jersey, now that game is not visible on our app. I mean, it's incredible what these people have come up with to make it so that everything we're offering is legal, but there's so many different things, and it's not just in this country, it's everywhere throughout the world.
You stole my example. I was going to use the Rutgers one too. I think I state game too. Is that no? One of the things, and I guess I apologize if there's any Rutgers fans in the audience, that one of the most popular comments was like, "Damn it, I wanted to put it all in against Rutgers." You would always see that from the people in New Jersey that would be Rutgers alumni, and it would be kind of funny sometimes. No, in social media, there was a big delineation between two types of posts you could have. And one of those posts is marketing, and the other one is what would categorize as social commentary. So what marketing would be is anything that has a line in it, anything that could be a prompt for someone to wager, anything that shows that. Any of those posts need to have disclaimers on it. And each state has its own disclaimer, and that's why you'll see all these commercials. At the end of the commercials, you'll see all that little writing at the end, and you'll see on social media graphics, you'll see the same thing. On the social commentary, things that are a little bit more lenient, that would be a meme. That could be taking a video highlight of Mahomes airing it out to hit the over and going, "Hey, congratulations to those who hit the over." That would be social commentary. That does not require a disclaimer. However, one of the things at DraftKings that was definitely key was obviously we cannot market the actual bets of Rutgers and places of that nature, but we couldn't even do social commentary on those too. So if there is some viral moment off of an Ohio State Rutgers game and everyone else is posting a meme about it or something like that, we can't touch it. We can't touch it. We can't acknowledge that it's going on. I think a lot of it is that we're almost seeing different states kind of figure it out as they go, so to speak. Is that one of the big legal precedents was what's called the Wire Act, and what the Wire Act is about promoting gaming in places that it is not legal from a place that it is legal, and vice versa. These laws were written before social media was a thing. So if I'm going to put out a post on DraftKings social media account, you can see that anywhere. You can't really, if it's not legal in Utah, somebody from Utah still could follow that account that way and could still see those things. So because a lot of these laws were written before social media was a thing, before honestly, in some of the cases, I feel like before the internet was a thing, with some of these laws going way back. You see a lot of these laws that maybe live below the surface, that maybe were not being focused on going back to even the 80s and the 90s, that places are having to revisit now. And maybe that doesn't necessarily touch the original question of colleges in different markets, but I think it just shows the overall degree to which different places are kind of having to revisit precedents that have existed from long ago and having to address them as they go. So as we go and as we see different places have different levels of progress, I'm really interested to see what states that maybe in the past did not offer betting on in-state schools maybe change that, or I mean, I would assume it would be places would be more inclined to add it that didn't have it as opposed to the other way around. But you just have so much stuff being revisited that way because nobody quite planned for this, so to speak.
We have another question. This one's from Michael. How is the acquisition of Barstool Sports for Penn National Gaming going to affect the industry? Is there like a sense of competition between the sports books, or?
Not really. I mean, it for other guys, what they're doing more is comparing lines. At least on my side of things, there is competition in terms of trying to get customers. And what Barstool and Penn Gaming just did was basically pair a media outlet with a book, which is brand new to this country, not brand new to the world, but brand new to this country. And I think the main thing that pairing is going to do is just open the door for more of that. You're going to see, I'm betting at some point, you're going to see ESPN is going to partner with somebody and exclusively show Bet365's lines or Caesars lines or somebody like that. Just the way the NFL just paired with 3 books, they're going to exclusively show FanDuel, DraftKings, and Caesars lines. I think those are the 3 that the NFL just paired with. That's where the industry is going. You're going to see different media outlets, whether it be radio, social media, whatever, TV, they're going to partner with books and show those lines. And that's what Penn National and Penn Gaming and Barstool did. And that's what they opened the door. And we're the first ones through the door, really, in that subject in this country.
I think one of the things that goes off that too, you were mentioning, the NFL is only going to show those lines. I think one of the things, I don't know how far we're off from this. We might be 1 year, we might be 10 years for that matter. I think you're going to see a lot of the big tech giants in this country really dive into this. The Amazons, the Googles, the places that are the real behemoth companies that, you think MGM is a big company. No, Amazon's a big company. Is that I think eventually you get to the point where that those places are getting involved, where you could, and if they're partnering with a DraftKings or a FanDuel, it might be Amazon partners with FanDuel, so you could get FanDuel odds on your Amazon Prime account in the same way that you would purchase to place bets. I think one of the things with Barstool, obviously it was great customer acquisition because there's probably not any fan base than Barstool's fan base that's more loyal and looking to do that. I think one of the things, though, that really throws a wrinkle into that with companies like Barstool getting involved is that a lot of these are starting to become publicly traded companies. And the thing with publicly traded companies is there's a lot of rules. I guess in social media, there's a lot of rules with this, but this is like another batch of rules. And that's how you're advertising your product. Because depending on what you post, you could be accused of pumping up the stock market. You could be, I know, for example, Barstool's had this a few times. They obviously have such huge social media presences, and you'll see different guys that'll pound different things about the stock, and that, I mean, you don't want them coming in on you on that one saying that you're pumping up stock, so to speak. So to that point, though, I think you're going to see companies that maybe, like the Barstools and the places like that, as they get involved in this, and like I said, adding that other wrinkle as more of these companies become publicly traded companies also, is that you're just going to see the language have to change. I think maybe an example is Barstool is obviously famous for being like, no holds barred and anything goes. But at the end of the day, if it's going to cost you your gaming license, you're gonna bar those holds is what you're going to do. So I think you have the ability to see some of that overall tone change just because the money is going to go high, and I think that's only going to go higher as these Amazons and Googles and Yahoos and places like that get involved, just because the stakes is going to go up so high. I mean, as we see DraftKings and Penn National Gaming stock, doing relatively well. I mean, holy smokes, what if Amazon buys that and all the stockholders now have Amazon stock? I mean, this is a lot of money that's involved here for a lot of people, and I think that's going to change the nature of things a little bit too. I think and just adding one other final point to that, I think it's to the point that you'll have local cable companies getting on this too, that you could be watching a game at NFL Sunday and you could place a bet where you remote control. How they do that in terms of ensuring compliance and that the person's under 21, there's things that need to be worked out. But to that point, that's another example of these types of companies that have the ability to get in on that and really change that too, is your cable companies.
Awesome. So we do have about 5 minutes left, but we have another question from Giovanna in the chat. Ross, if you want to start this one, how do you feel the Caesars and William Hill partnership will play out?
I mean, I don't really see it affecting too many things other than it's two big companies working together, obviously, and that's multiple customer bases working together. But there's a lot of things that go into all of us being here in terms of betting companies. Each state has its own regulations, but New Jersey and New York, Bet365, we've had to partner with casinos as well. Now, these casinos don't necessarily have as big of a book as Caesars does, but we're partnered with Hard Rock here in New Jersey, and everybody has had to partner with different casinos and other companies and things like that in order to gain their licenses in different states in this country. So it's more of a publicly known thing, that cooperation, but they're not the only ones who have done it. The other thing that I think people in this country don't realize as much as people around the world do is the names that here in this country for these companies and a lot of times they're just U.S. names. For example, DraftKings didn't just get into sports gambling when U.S. legalized it. DraftKings is just the U.S. name of another company overseas that has been doing sports gambling for years. Same thing with FanDuel and a lot of these U.S. company names. So the partnerships between casinos and gaming companies is not new, and I think will continue.
I agree wholeheartedly with all that.
Awesome, guys. Well, I don't really think we have more time for questions. I want to thank you two from behalf of Marty and I and Rich.
Thank you, Ross.
Chat as well. I mean, the chat is active. Sorry to the whole chat that we can answer all the questions, but Dan, Ross, really appreciate you guys coming and taking your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your night, spend an hour with us, share some of you guys. You guys got great information. You guys are professionals in the industry. So we really appreciate it. If you guys don't mind, if you want to plug your LinkedIn's a little bit so you get people to reach out. We still have a few more questions in the chat, so I'm sure people will be reaching out.
We plug my LinkedIn right now.
Okay, perfect. So hopefully people will be reaching out with more questions that they have.
I'm under a little different stipulations. I can't really advertise myself too much in that type of sense. I do have a LinkedIn, but in terms of like betting information and things like that, I can't really publicize myself in that regard. But I am on LinkedIn. My name is Ross Sheflott. I do have a few minutes still here. I'll look through the chat, and if there's anything that I think needs an answer, I'll throw an answer on there for you guys. I'll type it out there for you.
Out of my Twitter account, I'm a little bit more active on there than I am on LinkedIn. Same name, you can add me there too, but Twitter is probably the best way to go. I follow that.
All right, so thank you guys again for joining us. Hope everyone has a good night.